Hello, I'm Kim Granados with the ASIS staff, and I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled Information Ethics and Digital Wellness Toolkit. This session is sponsored by SIG-III through their Winter School Initiative. Our presenter today is Naila Parbu, and our moderator today is Dr. Lili Sefi, Chair of SIG-III. I'd like to ask the audience to type your questions into the question panel box at the top of your screen, and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be available within 24 hours and will be sent to all registrants. I will now turn this session over to Lele, who will introduce our presenter.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the second webinar of the Winter School for Enhancing Research Skills. My name is Leili, and I will be today's speaker moderator. We hope you find today's webinar to be an educational and thought-provoking networking opportunity. The Winter School presents 3 workshops and 3 webinars professionals in developing their research skills through various tools and techniques for understanding social behavior and analyzing large data sets. Today's webinar is on information ethics and digital wellness toolkit. I wish to thank ASIS, especially Kimberly Granados, Deputy Executive Director, for providing the platform and all their great support, as always, for facilitating the Winter School. I also wish to extend a big thank to today's presenter, Naila Parbu. Naila is a PhD scholar in information science and currently serves as a senior researcher at OUTA organization on undoing tax abuse. Her research interests include information behavior, information retrieval, cold case investigations, information ethics, digital wellness, and competitive intelligence. From 2014, she was the Junior Research Officer for the African Center of Excellence for Information Ethics. And in 2017, she became the office manager, where she coordinated digital wellness workshops at national health insurance sites with the South African Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's webinar. And Naila, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Leili, for the beautiful introduction. So today, good day, everyone, good evening, and good morning as well to those of you who just woke up. Today, we'll be discussing information ethics and digital wellness, and this is a toolkit that the African Center of Excellence for Information Ethics developed from 2011 up until 2017. So we're just going to go through it just a little bit, and then from there, we can actually give you access to those books. Okay, so the African Center is within the University of Pretoria, the Department of Information Science, and that was where I was based before the new position at OUTA. Okay, so I'm just gonna change the slide. Now, with regards to information ethics, we have to start off at the actual foundation of what is ethics first, and that we look at the basis of utilitarian, deontological, ethics of case, valence of ignorance, as well as within a South African context, we look at Ubuntu ethics. And all of these have one thing in common, and that is looking at what is good for me should be good for someone else. And that's how we actually started off with the basis of our pyramid in terms of information ethics. If I use information, will it be good for someone else? And if they use that information, will it be good for me? Then we move up the little pyramid and we've got the concept of purpose. Now, purpose stands for privacy, accuracy, intellectual property, access, and the latest one is then security. And all of these form part of what is good for us and what is good for the others as well. But also when we're searching for information, does it have an impact on the privacy of ourselves as well as individuals that are going to be making use of this information? within a South African context. Again, I'm going to bring it back here and there to South Africa just to give you a little bit of background of what was happening during this time when most of these things were being developed as well within the center. There was a secrecy bill that was being developed based on making everyone's information available, and this included your your financial documents, your personal information. All of that was supposed to be made available to every company, which is going against the South African constitutional right and the rights of individuals without being in South Africa as well. And this became a huge deal to a lot of people, and they fought against this bill. And eventually, the people won because, again, it's going against the constitutional right. So, you do have to look at privacy. Then, accuracy, is that information actually accurate that I'm using? Because I'm going to be making decisions based on the information that I find. Will it be a good decision, or is it going to end up being a bad decision because of the information not being accurate? And this also works within your research fields. If you are publishing information, they're going to have peer reviews checking on the facts of that information. If you are going to publish incorrect or infactual information, they're going to tear your research apart basically and say, well, this is not correct. And you will then be deemed as a bad researcher, or you may not even go past the ethics board. So you also have to look at those. Intellectual property is based on who is this information, whose property is this information, or whose system is this information? Is it going to be the universities that you're working in or various institutions, or is it your own intellectual property? In most cases, if you're working within an organization, you'll see it in your contracts. It says any patents or any information that you create, all the copyright and intellectual properties belong to the company. When you leave that institution, you cannot take it with you. So that is also something that you have to consider each time you're creating and developing new information. Then also accessibility in terms of how much access do I have in terms of information? Am I able to access things in different languages? Am I able to access information from various countries? Before, there wasn't all of this accessibility due to geographical locations. If you wanted information, you'd have to go to the library, or you'd have to, for example, buy a book from overseas and have it couriered down. Now, all that information is being made available to you at your fingertips, basically using your technologies. And then security again. How secure is that information? Are we actually secure when we are online? For example, you've logged into this webinar. How secure is the browser that you are using? Are you sure that no one is going to, for example, bomb our Zoom meetings or our webinars? That has happened before. You know, hackers do tend to do those things. So we tend to fight against all of that corruption. Then we move up again, which is social justice and the value of knowledge. Again, social justice then looks at, for example, marginalization, your digital divide, your e-waste. If you think of the electronics that you currently have, how many of you have taken that electronics that are now old and inoperable? So, inoperable, apologies, and left it aside, or packed it in storage, or just thrown it in the bin? If you think about that, where does that actually go to? After a while, you take it out of your storage, you throw it in the bin, it goes somewhere else, you know nothing about it afterwards. But in actual fact, it's going to poverty-stricken countries like Uganda, like Ghana. Some go to Nigeria and Kenya, and those individuals that get hold of the e-waste are taking it apart because they do live in poverty-stricken areas. That parts actually cost a lot of money to them. It buys them their bread and their milk. And what happens is, if you think of all the toxic chemicals that actually are within these devices, you are making that area very dangerous for them. They can't grow things there. They aren't able to cultivate basically anything there. It's not even livable. If you think of mercury itself, how damaging can mercury actually be to an individual? If you drop that on your skin, it's burnt. And these individuals don't make use of protective gear. They don't have gloves. So they're technically burning most days because they also don't know how to do it in a more environmentally friendly way. So we have to consider our e-waste, and then also green computing, moving towards paperless offices is now something that's a big trend in most organizations, and I see it a lot in the American organizations where they're going completely green, which is amazing. So good job. And then we move up again, which is intercultural societies. And here we're looking at indigenous knowledge. We're looking at different cultures and how they also being marginalized because of the information that they do not get access to, or they do not give individuals access. We look at age marginalization, because age also has a big impact on how much you actually want to access and make use of technology. If you look at your grandparents, how many of them actually make use of technology or want to learn? Most of them sit with those old Nokia 3310s, and they're comfortable with it because it's quick and easy. They know what to do with it, and there's not too many apps and confusing things, and they don't need to swipe up and down using their fingers and so forth. It's the quickest thing for them. Whereas we move towards more technology. Each time there's a new technology available, we need it, we want it, right? So you look at age, you look at the gray digital divide, which is also part of age marginalization. Then there's also gender marginalization, not being accessible to information because I'm a woman or because I'm a man, based on what information is actually being shared. For example, men don't generally get access to pregnancy information if they go to a nurse. They're more like, maybe your wife should ask us this information because it's her body, and that sort of takes them away from wanting to get access. It gives them that negative view of, well, I'm not a woman, I can't get this information, where in actual fact, had they gotten that information, it would have been easier on the woman as well, because now her husband or her partner knows exactly what to do in specific situations. And then the next one is social responsibility in digital citizenship. And this is the most important one at this point because of the fact that we're always in technology. If you look at the time that you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing that you look at? Your phone, right? Most of us are picking up our phones, looking at what happened throughout the day, who has sent us messages, what was happening throughout the day with other individuals. We feel like we need to connect again. So that's the first thing we look at. We make sure that we've covered all our work emails before we even get into a shower. And that is how it's so ingrained into our lives. Our banking apps are also on there. Our daily calendars are on there, telling us what we should do throughout the day so that we know we follow a certain routine and certain sequence. And because of this, we need to also then consider, how is it affecting us mentally and physically? In terms of mentally, am I deteriorating the brain that I have? Am I having an impact on this, having so much information, experiencing information overload and becoming burnt out by the amount of information I'm exposed to on a daily basis? We need to remember to look after that, because that is what is growing with us as we age. It's going to help us remember everything that we need to do as human beings, right? Then with regards to physical eyesight, it has an impact on eyesight. It has impacts on carpal tunnel syndrome in the hands. The way that we sit, sometimes you have lower back issues, you get knee problems. As we grow old, we find out there's a lot of things that can happen when we're constantly in front of a computer that we never thought of when we were younger. So that also makes us think of the responsibility to ourselves, but also responsibility to others. Think of the work environment. Do you take regular breaks? Do you step away from your computer for at least 20 minutes at a time, just to take a breather, look at something different so that you don't damage the eyesight? Does your company allow for that? And that's where we say, like, it's very important, especially post-COVID, where all of us are working more online than we ever did before. Okay, so next slide. With the implementation of ICTs, we look at ICTs being implemented constantly on a daily basis, not just in our personal lives, but in our work environments, in our school environments. And we look at these being developed not only in developed countries, but also developing countries, and how we need to think of what are the ethical concerns related to implementing technology. What are the laws that govern the use of information when we are making use of these technologies? Are we supposed to be constantly sharing information, or should we be putting in policies? Most organizations over a period of time have started implementing social media policies because they've realized how certain information have an impact on the reputation of your organization. People were posting negative views on their companies, and this was then exposing their company in a bad light. And this was then having a negative impact on clientele, on suppliers. And this then deteriorates the company, which means that you are not making a profit. And that's how these social media policies came into place, so that people know exactly what they can and cannot post and what are the consequences of posting. So we need to look at those. Then also the global dialogue on information ethics. This has been a big issue with a lot of organizations in terms of what information can we share? What are the laws between the various countries? Is it the same? Are there differences? What are the differences? And how can we actually collaborate those differences into one proper policy, so that when we are globalizing organizations, we are following a structure? Sorry. Then we also need to look at various issues like privacy again, secrecy, intellectual property, our online communities. How entrenched are we in our mobile phones, becoming addicted to these technologies? We're looking at robots, and this is something that hasn't been new but is becoming more relevant today, especially with your AIs, looking at your chatbots. And then human enhancements. If you're looking at the technologies that have been created in changing your appearances, not physically alone, but even if you are the way that you look now, putting on filters, changing that. There's a joke that's a running joke in the family that says, if anyone ever looks for me, they'll never find me because my face is constantly changing because of the amount of filters I do use on my face. That's just a little joke there. So if I go missing, I might stay missing. And then also looking at various intelligences that have been coming about with technologies as well. The ICT implants, and this year we're looking at smart houses, we're looking at smart devices and appliances that a lot of people have been starting to implement within there. The only problem that people are experiencing when they're implementing this is malfunctions. Then if you are staying in poverty stricken areas, or if you are in a country like mine, South Africa, you experience load shedding, where we have certain times where there are no lights, which means that you don't have access to your house unless you manually switch your whole household back to normal. And then also thinking of telemedicine, teledoctors, all of those have been implemented to save us. And then finally, information overload and e-waste. We need to look at ethical considerations regarding that, and how can we actually change it, making it our responsibility to do it in an ethical and legal manner, not making anyone experience danger or harm, or exposing them to harmful chemicals. Okay, then again with the implementation, we look at it in terms of the interpretation. Everyone doesn't interpret information in the exact same way. And this is because of our IQ levels, our educational levels, the level of exposure we have to certain types of information. So accessibility has an impact. It also has an impact on the dialect. So I might be talking fast or slower than you experience. I might have a little twang to my R's. I might pull little words because of the accent in the dialect that I have coming from the country and the area that I'm from. So that might also have an impact. So we need to look at all of those things having an impact on your interpretation and the relevancy of that information in terms of culture. Again, culture also, for example, your verbal and nonverbal cues. I use a lot of hand movements, where hand movements in certain countries may not be acceptable. For example, thumbs up in South Africa means I'm good or I need a lift, right? But if you use this in most very staunch Eastern countries, they might see it as a inappropriate word. So sort of like picking up the middle finger in public, you know. So it depends also on the culture, the region, as well as the religion that you are then sharing that information with. And we are not separated or segregated by our geographical boundaries anymore. And this is because technology has been so ingrained in our daily lives. If you think of a specific terminology that you want to research, how quick is it to search for that information? Like that, quick, easy, right? We find a lot of articles, multiple pages of that information because of the metadata set to that information, and we are able to filter through that. We can do narrowing those filters with Boolean operators. But in most cases, not everyone uses those because they're not exposed to it. they tend to use long search strings. Usually the old generation type in the entire sentence of what they want to search. Sometimes the younger generation do as well. I'm one of those. Um, but it gives you the information that you're looking for. But before, it was never that. We had to go to a library, we had to go to a physical building to find the information you're looking for now. Now I can sit anywhere at any time and search for information. Okay. Like now, you're also sitting at any time in your country listening to a webinar with me, and you're getting the information that I'm sharing, which this was never available before. Then we also look at networks, communication networks. Each time you look, there's a new network. Now it's TikTok. Everyone's on this whole big TikTok trend, whereas before, my generation was Facebook. And before that, it was MySpace. And before that, there was something else and something else. And over time, it's changed. And you see how certain things phase out and how things are becoming more important. And you'll see how the younger generation knows exactly how to use these technologies before you can even learn how to log into those technologies or those social networks. It's because it's become so ingrained in our lives. They grow up with these technologies, where some of us from the older generation have to learn how to. So we sort of gradually grow into it. And then you also see how it also implements in various aspects in our lives. If you look at it, administration, in business, education, it's also in your social and technologies. Our daily life is very important there. And then art. If you look at art, it's no more just painting. People are doing art on their little tablets and making that now spectacular and changing things, and things are flying around and moving, and the illustrations coming out of those artworks. They're getting more exposure from that little artwork than Leonardo da Vinci. And he painted the Mona Lisa. So technology, important in most of our daily lives. So the role of information ethics, we need to look at what actually does it address. And this is what is right and good versus what is wrong as well as bad in the information society. Is it going to be good for me, or is it going to be bad for me? And vice versa to the next person. How good is that information that I'm going to be using, that it closes off the digital divide? Am I exposed to that information? Can I get access to that information? What about my skill set? Do I have the right skill set and technologies to close the digital divide? How many countries have you been, are not exposed to technologies, cannot be exposed to technologies because of the infrastructure that they have? For example, South Africa experiences load shedding, and we have this divide for that 2 hours where we can't. And then you have to buy something like what's in the background here, which is called an inverter. And most of you probably have seen it or have one in your home, just so that you can actually have lights for the next 2 hours. And that becomes difficult. It's very expensive as well. You have to look at the economics of it as well. Not everyone can afford this. Right. You look at new forms of injustices, like not being able to use your technologies because of things like this. What is the moral dilemmas that we're experiencing? What is the ethical questions that we need to start asking? Why do we have load shedding? What is the reason for it? Why is there no money? Why is there no coal? Constant questions are being asked. And that is what is an example of sort of ethical questions you would pose to a certain dilemma that you may be experiencing. Then also, how are we good citizens in terms of the cyberspace and the digital space? Are we being good citizens online? Are we having the same online behavior as we would offline? Are we the same person, or do we have two different personas? Then providing guidance while new laws are being made. Like I said, social media, there was never a policy, and all of a sudden, once you see the damages that social media had on certain companies, they started implementing it in all organizations, especially in universities. You'd see that students start posting things about universities, creating WhatsApp groups and creating these websites based on how bad experience they had at a university. And this then made a lot of the students leave the universities and move to different ones. And that had an impact on not just the individuals within that organizations in terms of monetary value, but also the morality of those individuals. And then the protection of your norms and values in sustainable societies. looking at the new trends and new movements. How are we gradually moving with that, and how are we acting morally and ethically? If you look at TikToks, right, there's a lot of teachers and business individuals on those TikToks showing very provocative sides to themselves in these videos. And this is something that was never there before. And that has an impact on the image at work. So you have to also think of, what should I actually be posting or not be posting? Is it good to post this kind of things? Who am I exposing to this information? Yes, there's something as freedom of expression, but if you are if you are expressing yourself freely, does it have a negative impact or positive impact? That is something that we constantly need to think about. What are our actions doing? Are they always going to be positive, always going to have a negative impact, not just on me, but on others? Okay, I hope I'm not going too fast, but I do only have a few more minutes left. Okay, so this was just a meme. I'm just going to leave it on for like 2 seconds while I have a sip of water. Okay, then we're going to carry on. We look at ethics is about balance. So what is good for me and what is good for others? And we have the little triangle there on the top. It's always good. It has to always be on the top. We always have to look at the good in everything that we do. And then we have self and we have other. And we look at it as a triangle. So each time it breaks down. Self, is it good for myself? Is it good for others? And then self and others, is it good for them as well? Is it constantly going to be good? And we have to find that balance. If you do not find the balance, you're either acting very selfishly or you're acting too selfless. And the thing with this is you're never going to be able to sustain that. You're either going to experience extreme burnout and frustration and depression, or you're going to go extremely selfish and then you become angry and depressed as well. You see how all of these have an effect on your emotions. You'll see when a lot of people either are completely selfless, over time, they sort of deteriorate in their personalities. They start off all bubbly, and then over time, you see a change in their personality. It's because they've been acting good for others and not experiencing that back themselves. And this happens with information as well. You must constantly think of information being shared also with what emotion you are being sharing that information with. Okay. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, the sources of ethical awareness and values. So we start off with family, okay, because that is the heart of everything. Your family and your friends, they give you the information that you need. They know what is ethically right and correct, and they have values that they instill in you from the time that you grow up. So when you are small to when you grow older, they build up those values with the experiences and the exposures to certain situations and circumstances, and they give you that guidance that you require. Education also. You start off in school in grade 1 or I'm not sure what you call it in your terms, but it's sort of like kindergarten maybe, or Montessori. So you start off there. Each year you're learning something new up until you get to high school in matric or probably university level. I'm not sure how it works in your countries, but it's sort of the terminology actually. But it goes to the highest level and how education has impacted us throughout our years. Right, culture and religion also has a major impact on ourselves. The values that we were instilled with. When you think of old stories that your family used to tell you, you'd sit at the dining room table or at the kitchen table just sharing all these stories of what grandma and grandpa did and great grandma and great grandpa did. I always hear the story of how my great granddad came from Pakistan and how my great grandmother came from Afghanistan and how they met and what they did to grow the family. And you carry those stories forward, and I'll be telling that to the next generation of how my ancestors came and what they did to build themselves up within the country that we're living in. And then it continues. Then also experience and current disclosures, looking at the experiences that you have. And this can be positive and negative experiences. It can be life experiences, work experiences as well, that have an impact on the way that you look at information and make use of information. And then also your historical age and era. And this year you look at the various revolutions that we've been through. Looking at how it's changed and what information we can take from those eras and improve on them so that we have a sustainable earth by the end so that we have the following generations to make use of it. Otherwise, generations die out and so forth, or culture dies out. So you have to look at how those eras had an impact and what good we can take from them, and what were the bad actually, and change those bad into making it positive and sharing that information with the next generations. Then the place for ethics. This was by researchers that were looking at how the place of ethics is very important within information. And they state that ethics can be seen as part of societal backgrounds in which technology is developed and used. And this is very important. We need to look at how has it been developing, how it's going to constantly be developed, and how can we actually use it in an ethical manner, because societies are constantly being changed with technologies. You see it as you grow up from what we used, thinking again generational, using cassette tapes all the way now to cloud, okay, for storage purposes. I'm one of those that started listening to songs on the radio and trying to record it on the cassette tape, and now I'm using Spotify. How far has this change been? Okay, miles apart. So you look at how developments have changed in societies as well. You look at in the areas that we live in, the collectively what we want, in terms of the activities. Are they good? Are they bad? Is it acceptable behaviors? Is it unacceptable behaviors? And this is where also culture and religion come into play. What is acceptable for the culture or the religion, and what is unacceptable? And this also has an impact on what information is then shared. We look at moral norms and we evaluate and justify all of these norms that are then being created. We also look at then morality and values of not just ourselves, but others and society as a whole, and how it changes the generations to come. Okay. Then we move to an acronym that the African Center of Excellence for Information Ethics developed, and this was based on something called MOVE, and it stands for motivation. So what actually motivates us to search for information and make use of that information? Why do we need that information? We constantly have to ask those questions. What is it going to be used for? Is it going to be good? Are we going to get something out of this? Is there productivity based on this? And how do we constantly maintain that motivation to actually search for information? Then we look at O, which is opportunities and risks. And this is then based on, is the opportunities that am I getting an opportunity with the information that I am gathering? Or am I creating a risk for myself? And if I do take that risk, will it turn into an opportunity later on based on the information that I'm using? And that's a lot happens within research when you're taking a risk on something that has never been researched before. Am I going to be wasting my time for the next 10 years studying a PhD? Or is there going to be an opportunity at the end of that PhD? What is going to happen after that? And that's why most people go into research, because they know there's a lot of opportunities based on after studying a PhD, what they can do. Then a vortex, if you've ever seen a vortex, it's a spiral and then it meets in the middle. So you start off really big, okay, very broad, and you sort of narrow yourself down and it trickles down, right? And it comes straight to the center point, and that is where you are finding the relevant information. So you broaden your search and then narrow it down to what you actually need, removing information overload and burnout. And then the effect. What effect does it have on me? Is it a positive effect? Is it a negative effect? What course of action will happen with this? What is the result of this? Is it going to be a positive or negative result? Is there a cause and effect to the decisions that I make using this information that I've gathered? Now we move into more of the digital wellness. And what digital wellness is it's characterized by the ability of users to actually discern between what is dangerous for us and what is actual opportunities for us found within a cyberspace. And here it is, if I search for certain information, am I searching in the right places? Am I getting the relevant information? Am I getting the accurate information for me to make a good, actionable decision? Or am I diving too deep and causing harm to myself, sort of delving into the deep web, going into the wrong kind of information that's going to get me into trouble? Okay, so we look at those. Am I also acting responsibly? Am I hacking people's systems, or am I actually getting open source software and open source information? And then also aligning our online behaviors. So here it says his and hers, but it also includes the rest, them and theirs. Just it was quicker to put it this way, so I do apologize. I should have edited it on the slide. But online behaviors and then the values that we have, whether we have offline values are the same as our online values. Do we have the same persona? Do I act the same that I am now when I'm offline? Or do I have a more flamboyant kind of behavior online, whereas offline I'm more timid, more quiet? And you'll see this does happen and it occurs. More people are more sort of bold and flamboyant and more courageous online than they are offline. And this is where we bring in bullying as well. People are more susceptible to bullying online than they are off in face-to-face bullying or physical bullying, because when you are online you're able to bully people being anonymous and you can say whatever you want to whoever you want, however you want, at any time, and there may not be in your mind a consequence, but there are consequences to those actions. And in the book, the Digital Wellness Toolkit, there is a specific section based on cyberbullying and how people need to look at this according to their kids, because a lot of young children are being exposed to cyberbullying, and this leads to depression. They have eating disorders. They can go through certain periods where they're okay, they're happy, and then they're sad. And then when it gets too much, that is when the worst happens, and that is suicide. So we need to constantly look at the behaviors of our kids and people around us and how they're behaving when they're online. Okay, so that's just a life lesson. Okay, again with digital wellness, are we DigiFit? Okay, do we look at our wellness when we are online? Do we sit up straight? Are we looking directly at our screens? Are we using an ergonomic space or environment? Or are we slouching? Do we sit on the couch and sort of lean back? And do we not give ourselves a break from the screen? If we switch from one screen, are we switching to another screen, to another screen, to another screen? We constantly need to look at our own well-being, right? And then digital citizenship, again, sharing my information with you in a legal and ethical manner, and you doing the same thing. And then etiquette as well, sending proper email, work emails. A lot of students, when I was at the university, you'd use SMS language, and I'd refuse to respond to that because that is not academic writing. That is not being net etiquette or having ethics in emails. And they know this. So after a while, they'll change the way that they type and they'll write in full sentences. I'm like, that is the way to respond or ask a question to your lecturer. And then safety is very important as well. You have to constantly be safe. Yes, these technologies are lovely. They do wonders with what we need at our fingertips, but they can also cause dangers, and that's hacking, phishing. There's also scams. A lot of people lose their money. Personal story, I just got my first paycheck. I was still young. I think I was about 18. Put it in my account. And then I got an email saying SARS, which is our Texas company. And they said, well, if you file this amount, give us your bank details, you'll get a tax return, and this is the amount you'll get. And I thought, well, I'm going to get 4,000 Rand that time back on, I think I just made about 1,000 Rand. And I was like, but this is a lot of money. And being the teen that I was, being so susceptible and naive, gave them my bank details, and they stole the money that was already in my account. So you look at the safeties of these things. We have to constantly consider, how safe are we? We have parental control now, but we also know that kids are very clever. They break through those things. So constantly change that. Constantly change the passwords to those. But also remember the passwords. And then also safety in terms of your online locations. Don't just share your online locations, because you might be being tracked by individuals that might be wanting to cause harm to you. Okay, so they're following your locations every time you check into a place, every time you post on social media. A trick that we usually use is posting it after we've come back, so they know that we're in the house, and you can't sort of follow me and things like that. So especially with women, it's very important, and also kids. They shouldn't constantly have their location on in terms of people posting it. They should have their location on for their parents to track them, not for people to know where they are that aren't family or parents. And then the one is looking at our online behaviors again. Is it good? Is it bad? So this is what one of our covers of the toolkit looks like, and this is for the kids. This is from ages sort of 1 to kindergarten. That was developed. And the reason why I'm showing you this picture because it's so cute, and it's so that you know that there are multiple books that you can actually go to our website for and download. It's freely available, open source software. Open source materials, and you can actually read this. And you also get a black and white so that you can make it into a coloring book for your kids while you read out the poems of technology. So that's just one. Now, who was involved in actually developing these toolkits? And the reason why I bring this up is part of being in information ethics, giving credit where it's due. Okay, so the Department of Information Science, it's the African Center of Excellence. Then within South Africa, we have various departments, and it was the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services, also UNESCO and IFAP, and then Intel Education. They all came together and realized that there's an important need for us to know what is digital wellness, and how we need to start implementing it in schools, in universities, as well as homes and communities, and then later on to younger children because they are making use of technology now. And this is where the toolkit was then developed. Okay, so teaching what I preach, sharing who gave me the information. Right, so the Digital Wellness Toolkit, there are 9 books that are available to you. And then I can also put the website in the chat box a little bit later as well. And I'll also give it to Layli to share as well. And we have the Digital Wellness. So this is a manual. So you get a manual and an activity book. So the manual for facilitators, where you can go through the materials, get the answers, and then you give the activity book to your workshop participants. And then it comes with the resource book with all the definitions that you require within information ethics and digital wellness. Then we also realized that schools are also implementing technology. So we have one for secondary schools. So the teachers get a manual, as well as the primary school teachers, they also get a manual, and then they get activity books pertaining to that specific age group for your secondary school. And then your parents get an activity book for primary school learners so that they can actually do it with them and interact with their kids while they're teaching them this. And then there's the 8th book, which is a roadmap for campus communities, so sharing that information to the communities within universities settings, so creating a curriculum based on information ethics and digital wellness. And the 9th book is the kiddies book, which is Digital Wellnest. Okay, we thought it was a good wordplay. And it's Let Us Play in a Safe Nest. So this is the one that I love advertising because it's the cutest kiddie book. And like I said, it comes in black and white and it comes in color. So you can decide which one you'd like to download for your kids. Or you can download both. And this is what the book looks like. So if you do go to the website, you're more than welcome to look at these and download them. Like I said, it is open source software. It's under Creative License. And this is just the first set of 3. There's the other 6 is also available, and they come in PDFs as well. So it's interoperable on most devices, or all devices actually. Okay. Now, in each of these books, they follow a specific structure. And the reason why we said it has to follow this is because each one is exposed to each of these over a time period. Okay, so we have digital citizenship. That is the foundation that we have. And how are we actually good citizens? How do we make sure that what we post is correct and relevant and is not going to be harmful for us and others? Then cybersecurity. So we look at what are the security measures and what can be the negative impacts. So what are the exposures that we can have? So like we said, hacking, cracking, spamming, phishing, all of those are covered in this specific unit. And that shows you how, and it's got examples based on how people actually search for that information of you and use it against you. And also blackmailing is also included in there. Then cyber safety as well. And here again, creating passwords, encryption. So we teach you kind of how to go about doing all of those things. And the various cyber crimes, what crimes, and then also the consequences of those crimes in various countries as well as included. And then information ethics again. Under the cyber safety, we also include a full section just on cyberbullying, especially in the younger kids' books, because this is something that we've noticed when we did our surveys that a lot of people are being cyberbullied. But this doesn't only pertain to young kids. Adults are also being cyberbullied by people posting nasty comments on their posts. So if I want to post a gorgeous outfit and someone doesn't like it, they sort of post a negative comment which has an impact on my self-esteem. And that is actually cyberbullying. We may not always see it that way. We see it as freedom of expression, or we it's classified as freedom of expression, but we're not realizing that it's actually hate speech and causing harm to someone else. So we constantly need to think about what we're actually posting. Okay, and that also includes then net etiquette. I included here online safety and security basis, and this is looking at, for example, the privacy that we have to set for our computers, looking at your settings, reading your terms and conditions every time you sign up for a social network, because it does tell you that it's selling your information to a third party, and then you wonder why you're getting these telemarketers calling you on life insurance when you're only 25, and all of these kind of things. So we need to constantly read those terms and conditions. It's telling us exactly where our information is going. Even signing up for those little cards that say you get a discount on something, or you get um, rewards on this card, you're actually selling your information to third parties. And because it's free with some of this purchases that we have, we tend to buy it because it makes it convenient for us. But we don't realize that we are selling our information for very little money based on that. And our information is way more important, because your information and your knowledge is power. Remember that. Then passwords, we look at various passwords, your two-factor authentication, sometimes three-factor, your biometrics. And in the book, there's sections based on this, and there's also a checklist that you go through. Is the information that you're sharing safe? How do we secure it? How do we encrypt this information? So it tells you exactly what to do and how to go about doing it, and where to actually check for all of these types of information that you might be sharing with others. So usually with your terms and conditions, they don't post it on the first page, second page. It's on the third page, smaller writing than the rest of the text. So if you're ever interested, go have a look at that. Okay. Then again, like I said, technology is amazing, but we need to be careful. We can either be giving ourselves a lot of opportunities, or we might be harming ourselves and making ourselves susceptible to any form of danger. And this is why we talk about digital wellness. It is very important that we look at how does it affect us mentally, physically, psychologically. Okay. This is just a cute little meme I thought about. And then I'm going to leave you with this, and this is by Aristotle, and he said, and it says, we do not act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but we rather have those because we have acted rightly. Okay, so just food for thought. All right, this is just some of my references, and that's my last slide. So thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any questions, we have, I think, about 11 minutes, 12 minutes actually. So go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neila, for wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed, and it's very, very, for very important topic. The notion of being well in digital society is very important, especially for youngsters to know and to be aware of that. And I wish it would be like a kind of workshops that you teach
Yeah.
us like how to implement. It would be really great. So thank you so much. I'm going to start questions. Before questions, I would kindly ask everybody, please take our feedback. So there is a question that when a social media information policy is there, people are posting unintentional posts, which might hurt others' sentiment. State level monitoring is taking it in different level, How to make people aware about it?
So, what most organizations are doing, as soon as they create a policy, they start marketing it to the entire organization. And they constantly sending out, we give weekly updates to monthly updates, depending on how big your organization is, to share this information with them. I mean, we give them training based on this. So, you do in house training and you say, well, these are what you can actually post, what you can't post. And these are the repercussions. And it's also stated in work contracts that if you go against the university or the institution, you have first warning, second warning, third warning, and you're out. That's the only way that we've actually been able to implement our policies, is giving warnings and letting them know and constantly marketing those policies. You can't write up a policy and just have it lie there without letting anyone know about it. You have to market it a lot, and getting them to read it. Give an incentive. That's the best way to do things. Give them incentive. Tell them, if you, for example, read the following work policies, give them a few, a few policies, and then give them the afternoon off, or tell them there's going to be a voucher and who reads it faster, something, just to motivate. Because the minute you start motivating them to read this, and this also in with us, I ask the students to read the policy because I made them write a test based on the policy. So there's different ways of implementing it and encouraging people to actually read the policy. And now all my students know what our social media policy is and what are the repercussions. So
Thank
depends
you.
on how.
Thank you. And but they're asking for the link, Naila, Wellness Toolkit. Could you drop the link to the website that has the digital wellness toolkit? I think you can share in the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, I will do that now.
Yeah. The other question, just a minute.
Okay, let's get that for you.
So can I read the other question?
Sure.
Do you
Okay.
think that ethic in science is the same worldwide? Doesn't matter the geographic location or cultural differences?
I'm sorry, can you say the first part again?
Do you think that ethic in sciences is the same worldwide? Doesn't matter the geographic location or cultural differences?
So there is differences in ethics itself, because ethics is part of philosophy, and culture does have a major impact on the way that you see things as ethical and unethical. Sometimes we look at, for example, when people say, you know what, if you just take a slice of bread without anyone knowing because you're hungry, it's okay. People say that, but in actual fact, that's stealing. Do you see how ethics plays a part? The morality is you're hungry, so someone's trying to feed you without other people knowing, but in actual fact, that's stealing. So that's just like a general ethics question. If I leave a bar of gold in front of you, how many of you would actually take the bar of gold or leave it there? Then again, ethics plays a role on whether you're going to take it or not take it. And again, culture plays a role. Geographical location does play a major role in terms of various understandings of information and what is important. But we do find commonalities in certain ethics policies and procedures. If you look at companies like Intel, who's globalized, and Microsoft as well, they have very structured policies that work together because they also collaborate together. So they sort of ingrained both of their policies together to make one ethics policy that everyone follows. So we're breaking down those barriers of geographical locations, but they're still there.
Mhm.
I'm
Thank
sorry, are
you.
you able to see the link in the chat?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. And there is a question, another question that mentioning like thanking for sharing the toolkit details and asking, I was wondering how to institutionalize it, this toolkit, because schools, colleges, and universities have their own curriculum, which is graded, and most of the time they are regimented. What are few examples exist creating a space for this toolkit into existing frameworks? This is first part. And then furthermore, how to motivate students to attend to these sessions, workshops, knowing there are no grades or stakes attached to it. The second part exactly is my question. You know, sometimes it's happening in like a university or like, for example, public libraries.
Okay, so the first part is how you implement these policies in existing policies. Am I correct with that? Okay, so with the toolkits, there are sections that you can actually just pull through. You don't have to use the entire toolkit in your policy. What you do is you look right at the back of each of these books. They give you certain terminologies, they give you guidance on certain things, especially with the one with the community, so workshop participants, and then the campus community. It tells you how to use it. But there's also, I'm going to give you access to the curriculum. And what we do with these is we just take certain parts of the information that works for our own organization, right? And implement those. So this is under the books at the center. You'll see there's cross-cutting themes. There's also the African reader. There's quite a few of them that we do have. So I just want to cut this URL for you, and they all are open source. So the reason why you'll see there's also, sorry, a curriculum to teach information ethics at universities, and this is based in South Africa or Africa basically, but it can be implemented in most organizations and institutions worldwide. It depends on how you sort of feel the need for certain things. You don't have to incorporate every single thing. That's not what the aim of these workshops are. It's to take things that you feel is important for your institution or your company and work with that and ingrain it. So I would just say look at what these books entail and how you can draw on certain information, and then also within the cross-cutting themes as well as the curriculum book, and from there work on a policy. And remember, policies constantly change because technology changes, so you can easily incorporate certain things. With regards to not giving incentives, um, it is a difficult one, but like I said, the way that I implemented these was giving my students a test based on it, or when you're opening up a module. So I don't know if you do online information modules and things like that where they have access to everything. Before you open up that module, tell them they need to read the social media policy before they can get access to that module. So that gives them an incentive without having to pay for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Very
We have to
useful.
look for ways. We have to look for
Yeah,
ways to get the kids
exactly.
involved.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a comment that saying thank you so much. It was useful webinar. I just wanted to read for you. And then the other question is that what is SNS language? I assume something like lots of
Oh,
laugh.
SMS.
But could
So that
you
is
note
normal.
what the acronym stands for?
Okay, so that's the instant messaging language that the students
Okay.
use. So, sort of like LOL is SMS language for us. So it's instant message texting that people use a lot in younger generations, or they use certain acronyms like LMFAO, which is Laugh My, yeah, that
Yeah.
area off and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could use that word on a webinar, but things
Mhm.
like that. So they usually say hi, and then they leave out certain vowels as well. So
Yeah.
it's HW for how, and I'm like, that's not how you text or email someone that's
Mhm.
senior to you. You need to use full English. There's things like
Yeah.
vocabulary. Use the
Yeah.
vocabulary. So
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. Only 3 minutes left. Just last question. Could you explain
Sure.
how the definition of digital wellness different from digital literacy, information literacy? Just very
Okay,
brief.
so digital wellness is your actual characteristics and your behavior, your own behavior. Whereas digital literacy and information literacy is how you actually make use of that information. And sorry, that's information literacy. Digital literacy is using technologies, knowing how to actually work with technology, that skill set that you develop. So, can you type on a computer? Can you use a printer? Those kind of things. That's just like a very basic definition.
Thank you
But if you
so
want
much.
more, they're in the books as well.
Sure. Thank you so much for wonderful presentation. And I would like to thank once again from our attendees for joining us and ACES for their great support, especially Kim for continued support. Thank you, everyone. Kim, the floor is yours.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Thank you, Naila, for this webinar that, help us makes ourselves a little healthier with some digital wellness. And I also want to thank Lele for moderating the session and for SIG-III for sponsoring such great content. I want to remind listeners that one of the many ACES benefits is complimentary access to all webinars. A recording of today's webinar and a copy of the slides will be posted to the ACES website by tomorrow and will be available to all ACES members and paid registrants. Within 24 hours, attendees will receive an email with a recording of the webinar and a survey. I encourage you to complete this within 7 days. Again, I'm Kim Granados with ACES staff, and I thank you for attending today's webinar. This concludes the session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.